Can we sit up here?
Yes, absolutely, and I know you had typed or prepared notes. If you forward those, we will read all of them. And I know it's tough, you had a lot to say, and the 3 minutes came, and you had 5 minutes. Yeah, so if you want to send them the thing, I promise you, we'll get them read. For sure. So, do you want to tell me right now, too? And let me see if I'm understanding right. The issue is specifically LGBTQ students at school. And I think your son was saying that it feels like the districts are promoting that we have the rainbow poster. I mean, schools have the rainbow posters out, and that's uncomfortable.
So, not necessarily. The issue that I'm having is that there's a lack of transparency coming from the district into the community with parents, but also with staff. This was an internal guideline that was sent to administrators, created by Dr. Patel, that the staff was unaware of until we were made aware of it.
The one that if the child comes in and talks to you about gender issues, you don't notify the parents.
That's correct.
Unless if they call and want information, you absolutely provide it.
Correct.
Okay.
And so my concern is, as a school counselor, not being transparent with the parents sets our students up for failure because it isolates them in their crisis, and it doesn't allow for there to be support, so that way they don't have to bear that burden alone. And I understand that one of the concerns is that outing a child could prevent families being mad or even abusing or neglecting a child. But as mandated reporters, we are to report all of that if a parent were to choose to make that choice. And so we are certainly going to make sure that the child is safe and protected, just like we do for any other crisis that they face when they come and tell me. But in order to fully support them, we have to nurture that parent-child relationship and be transparent by informing them of what's going on so they can provide those supportive services for the student.
I absolutely hear you, and I couldn't agree more. When we were talking about that earlier this afternoon, that a child's gender identity and any kind of care that they are going to receive, that's a decision that the child and the family make.
Right.
Schools stay out of that. We don't have anything to do with that other than pronouns. And if a kid says, I want to be called he, we call that child he. I'm assuming, and I've heard this from others, that if a child comes to you and says, I'm really struggling with whatever, that the first thing you say is, have you talked to mom and dad about this? And that would be the thing that I'm assuming would be the ongoing conversation. It's you just said so eloquently. You need to be supported. You need to have this conversation. You need to work through this with somebody. And family, that's who you need. Now, if the child says, I can't talk to them because I'm afraid, that's what this is about, is that it's not mandated reporting of that issue, that you have to call the parents and say, this is what your kid talked with. Absolutely continue that relationship with the kid. Continue encouraging that. And if, as you know, if parents call and say, has my kid talked to you about whatever, then of course you give them all that information. But it's got to be initiated by the family. The state has said, I shouldn't say the state, the Minnesota Schoolboard's policy is that you don't provide that information to parents at all. And so I think what Dr. Bickel was trying to do is saying, we're just saying, if a parent asks, you tell them. You tell them that you're not required to report it. So is that making your job harder?
So it puts staff in a really hard position to withhold that information from a parent because it's not forthcoming. So there's a couple of things. So federal law says that parents have their First and 14th Amendment parental rights to express their freedom of religion, their freedom of speech. They are the guiding voice of the child. So that means that they get to instill those beliefs and values into their child. And so if they feel like something is not aligning, whether it's curriculum or being asked pronouns or being asked to conduct, be part of a survey or what have you, if it does not align with those belief systems, they can opt out according to PPRA
Absolutely.
and FERPA.
Absolutely. In fact, if they don't like anything in the curriculum, I don't want my kid reading that book. We've had a long time policy that the parent contacts the teacher and just says, give them something else to read. And that will happen. Absolutely. That's a parent's right.
But the problem is if the parents don't know to request it or don't know that this is even a guideline or a policy, which it's not technically a policy yet because you as the board have not voted upon it. And that is a question I did email Dr. Bickel and he has not responded back to me, was when this guideline it will be proposed to you guys to vote on this school year.
That's a really good question. I thought we were already operating
So
under this. As a counselor, what have you been told?
Well, I was just told that this is the guideline and that you are not to out the child, that you are to not inform the parent, and that if you do, that you will face job retaliation up to termination. From my administrator, from Dr. Bickel, if I do not comply with the guideline, and I also had spoken to our union about this concern that I had. And
so in your practice and working with the kids, have you encountered many of them who've said, I don't want my parents to know, or I can't talk to my parents about whatever?
So, I mean, I talk to students all the time about various issues that they're always scared of. Like, let's say that they
Middle school. Yeah.
Well, in elementary, I feel like a lot of the transgender LGBTQ issues don't come up. You see more of that in middle and high school, but it's certainly there. It has not come directly to me yet. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen in the future. But kids are always scared of what mom and dad are going to say if they get in trouble at school, or if they are having a mental health crisis. I'm really scared to let them know that I'm suffering. But as a nurturing school counselor, it is my job to come alongside them, to care for them, support them, and encourage them that you're not going to be alone when I make this phone call. And when I have to break that confidence, because I can only break it if there's self-to-harm, self to others, or someone's hurting them, correct? And so when I have to break that confidence when it comes to mental health crises, I let them know, I'm here to support you. Your mom and dad care about you very much and will want to support you as well. So we're going to do this together, so you're not alone. And oftentimes they'll say, I'm so scared of how mom and dad are going to react. And I said, it's okay to feel that way. But mom and dad care about you more than anything, and they'll want to hear what you have to say and support you.
And that's a wonderful message. And I'm guessing that that's absolutely true in most cases. And I think my concern as a longtime educator is those few cases where it's not true, where the kid will go home and encouraging kids absolutely to talk with family, hugely important. I mean, appropriate.
Sure.
But if that kid says, I just can't, I don't want to, I'm worried about what's going to happen. For those parents who are not supportive and loving and whatever, and really let the kid have it, what then?
Well, see, that's the thing, is that it's not our job to police every family. But to make a blanket policy and take the integral part of the family unit out by not letting the parents know isolates the student from receiving that love and care and support.
And I get that, except for those families that won't provide that and really could do that kid harm. It's like when a kid comes in and says, you know, my mom's been beating me. As a mandated reporter, you report that.
We always do.
But you don't call mom.
Well, that's true.
So because if she's the perpetrator, that endangers that child. And I hear what you're saying. I absolutely believe values come from home, and we want families.
Isn't it possible maybe the wording of that guideline isn't so good because it's really tying the hands of the educators? Like they're not allowed to tell the parents. And it's one thing if you have a situation where maybe there's some concern with what happened at home, or maybe then the parent or the teacher would have the option to tell the parent at that point. They don't even have the option if they do inform the parents.
Well, and
I'm
guessing at that point, if the educator or the counselor, for that matter, has a real concern about something that's going on at home, they would talk with the building administrator or with whoever else and say, maybe in this situation, we're really concerned about this child's well-being, and there needs to be an exception. But I think that has to go through, you know, another level of authority or whatever to, I mean, it's like mandated reporting. You go to somebody else first before you go back to the family. And even if the kid is coming up with a big story, you know, mom beats me. Well, maybe mom told you to turn off the TV. You still have to report that. And then somebody else contacts the parents.
I guess my question is, where do parental rights, the federal rights, come into play when this clearly violates their rights by not aligning with their guiding voice?
It's a good question. It's a legal question, and I don't have an answer for that. I don't know enough about law in general and that law in particular to give you any kind of an intelligent answer.
Okay.
Families are so important, and family support is so important, especially with gender issues. They're the ones that deal with it with the child, and they and the child and whatever medical issues are involved. So we'll stay out of that. I mean, you decide, you make the decisions for your child. We have nothing to do with that other than the kid says, here are my pronouns. We use those pronouns. But beyond that, we don't offer any kind of gender affirming. We honor all kids. We respect all kids, whoever they are, whatever they identify as, whatever they believe. But we don't get involved with how families and family values are taught. That's family business. So
I guess there's one thing that was concerned too was just the level of transparency, because this was kind of a surprise to Christina here in February when this guideline was supposedly made in September. So there's some issues on transparency. Why was that not disseminated amongst the staff if they're going to be held to that standard?
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know if the December thing was about, you don't tell parents at all. I mean, you just don't share information. But to the Dr. McKill thing is that if parents ask you, tell them. So I don't know, but it's a good question, and I will find out. About transparency and timing.
So transparency with staff, transparency with parents, but it comes back to the question, and that's the question that seems to be deflected, in my opinion, by everyone that I've talked to, is if they ask. So parents sometimes, as you know, even with mental health crises, don't realize that their children are suffering with suicidal ideation. So how are they going to be able to ask those questions if they don't even see that their child is suffering? Even with the most loving and supportive and engaged parents, sometimes don't even see that.
So you're talking about mental health issues or
So
gender?
I'm saying if they ask, then we will tell parents. But how do they know to ask if they don't see any of the warning signs? They don't see that their child is suffering from this. Just like with mental health, kids are sometimes very good at hiding and repressing their feelings and not showing their parents what they're dealing with internally.
It's a good question. I'm writing it down. You know, how will they know? They may not know. And I guess the question again is, have you, and maybe I already asked this because I've been thinking about this, have you seen that happen often where a child is questioning gender and parents have no idea?
I mean, research shows that.
Okay.
Yes. But I haven't encountered it at my school specifically. No.
And I don't have a good answer for you, but it's one that's worth
Exploring.
exploring. Absolutely.
The other thing that I find really important is that part of our strategic plan is really emphasizing the priority of family engagement and family relationships. And as a school counselor, as you know, it is our job to be the bridge between the family and the school. And oftentimes, parents don't trust the schools very much for whatever reason. Their experience has maybe not been very good, or maybe they only receive bad news because their kid is not making good choices. So how can we help that family engagement and that school relationship if we are not sharing and being honest with the information?
Well, and again, you're the expert on this, so I'll defer to you. Aren't teachers and counselors and pretty much all other professionals in the school entitled to call the parents if they're concerned about a child's behavior or their academics or that type of thing? So I think that there's quite a bit of communication going on there. And in addition to the counselors, we have equity specialists and others.
Hello, everyone. 2 more minutes, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Provide that kind of bridge. So it seems to me that this is a pretty specific issue, strictly about the gender identity. And again, I don't have. I'll check.
Okay, thank you. And that was my question, is that we inform about everything else as we should. But why are we not informing about this? That's the underlying question. What is it that we are trying to hide? And what is the motivation there? That's what I want to know. And why is this being taught in staff development and even professional development by the Education Minnesota and our union? This, the community, the gender identity is being taught at these PD sessions.
Which PD sessions?
So when we have our district meetings, when we do deeper learning for professional development, there are sessions that are being offered by Education in Minnesota that are very specific to this topic. Now, we are all, we have autonomy in making in the choices that which ones we want to go to.
Not required, but they're offered. Okay.
That is correct.
Okay.
So that's my other question is, it almost feels like this is being imposed on us. We are being exposed to these type of things. It is being promoted. And that's what I want to know, why and where is it coming from?
They're being offered, certainly. And I guess as a former teacher and as a current Sunday school teacher, I have kids who are LGBTQ then and now in my classroom. And it's helpful for me to know how to approach these kids. I mean, for me, it's still new. You look like one thing and you're identifying as something else. You are a loved, wonderful individual, and I want to be sure that I'm respecting you as an individual. I may not understand how this works, but I want to make sure that I'm doing the best I can to interact with you in the best way that I can. So for me, it's been useful because we do have, I don't know, anywhere between 6 and 10% of our kids same as always, are identify as something other than, you know, cisgender or whatever. And they're here, and we love them, and you know, I guess it's the same way that there's PD for kids who are second language learners. You know, how do you work with a second language learner in your class? There might be additional information that you need to know. So
I think in like, I mean, in the same vein that like we have certain ages that kids are, you know, people are required to be like buying cigarettes at 21. Be
All right, thank you everybody for coming. It is 2 o'clock. We want to be respectful of your time and the school board members' time, so please wrap up your conversations.
Shouldn't we have the parents involved in these decisions when they're younger like that? Like, I want to be called this name or this pronoun, rather than like allowing this kid to come into school and just to make this decision and then not tell the parents you're involved. And that's kind of a fundamental issue.
Or to promote the gender affirming practices, which encompasses all of this based on their prefrontal
the
development.
gender affirming thing, I mean, the gender affirming is, when we see you, we'll call you the name you want us to call you. I mean, that's been since I started teaching in '73. It's like, you have a nickname you want rather than whatever is on here. Happily use your nickname. And sometimes kids stick with that forever, and sometimes they change their minds. But my experience as an educator, if you tell an adolescent, I'm not calling you that name, I mean, unless it's a profane name, you know, your name's Samantha, I'm not calling you Sam. That's when they start getting angry and pushing back and say, I'm Sam, I know I am. And then it becomes this kind of frustration. So the gender affirming here happens between the parent, the kid, and the medical community. We don't do that. We affirm the child.
And I understand that, and just so you know, like I don't judge. Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I love all kids.
Yeah.
You know, and we know there's differences. Okay, but where I have a particular issue is where some boy might identify as a girl, and then he's in the locker room with my daughter.
And that's an issue. I know that's an issue that comes up a lot, and I get that. So.
And that would be my question. Safety concern is the district prepared to respond to lawsuits if they come from someone being impregnated or injured or raped, you know, within the bathrooms or the locker rooms because of this? And I know that, you know, having unisex single stall bathrooms would be a wonderful resolution to some of these things. However, our buildings, a lot of our buildings are older. They don't operate that way. They're multi-stalled. But the guideline says multi-stall bathrooms are accessible to them. So we have to put in some good safety safeguards to protect our children too. And that's the thing, is if I didn't know about this guideline, and my mom didn't know about this guideline, and all of a sudden I'm going to gym class and I'm changing, and there's this boy in here, I'm not understanding why there's somebody else in
That's
here
terrific.
when
Yeah.
I'm not going to feel safe,
My
and then
understanding.
the parents are going to get really upset.
I hear you. My understanding is that we're dealing with that on a case-by-case basis, and there just haven't been very many.
And some of this, understandably, is theoretical, but when they're making the policy, then these are things that can happen in the future. So it's good to have that before you're making the policy, you're getting the parental input, the community input for
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for your time. I
thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, are these policies available in Spanish? You mentioned a second. And are they available in Somali as well? Okay.
Yeah, actually, and we have a tool now language, and it translates. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
It provides a transcription.